Good evening, everyone. I'm Simo, a software engineering coach here at Makers, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to the showcase of the final projects developed by our March cohort. So before I introduce the teams and we get to see their presentation, let me just introduce the cohorts with a few words. So what you're going to see today is the culmination of 2 weeks of hard work in teams, but also of individual learning journeys that started only 16 weeks ago. Many of you know that Makers is a 16-week coding bootcamp, and it's a very intensive learning experience. And over the course of these 16 weeks, many of our students go from knowing only basic coding to being able to build a full web application from scratch. At Makers, we believe that anyone can learn to code. And only a few months ago, the March cohort was doing their first few weeks here, and were wrapping their heads around things like test-driven development and Ruby classes. But today they can build and deploy entire projects that they come up with by themselves and end up with really polished products of their own invention. So aside from that, though, what's been really impressive for me to see personally is how they've grown together as a group. Learning at Makers involves a lot of pairing and teamwork, and that's not always easy, especially when you're also trying to learn and apply completely new concepts every week. So it's been really inspirational to see how the March cohort has met this challenge and created an empathetic and caring learning environment by supporting each other, cheering each other on, and sharing their knowledge and skills with each other on their journey into a new career. Those teamwork and communication skills are really important for software engineers, and I think they've built really strong connections that will support them and carry them forward in their careers. It's been a pleasure coaching them along the way, and I think you'll agree when you see their presentations that they've put together some really cool projects. So that's it from me. It's time for me to introduce the first team, who spent the last 2 weeks thinking about how we can use technology combined with the right incentives to help us be kinder to our environment. So Team Lads, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hey there, guys. This is Reclaim. This is a recycling reward loyalty program. When we first got together, we were talking about some different ideas, and we all kind of came to the conclusion that we wanted to work on something that would have an improvement in terms of environmental impact. We decided that the topic we wanted to tackle was overproduction of packaging. And so our application is basically a application that customers will get the opportunity to collect loyalty points in exchange for returning packaging. The reason we settled on a loyalty program is because we knew it had to be incentivized both for the user and for the business side. So from the kind of business perspective, this was good because it meant that not only would they kind of be incentivizing customers for repeat custom, but they would also sort of reduce packaging costs in the long term. And when we were looking into this, we found some real world examples. So for example, Lush giving discounts for returning their packaging, as well as H&M giving vouchers for recycling clothes. When we first started this project, we kind of wanted to make sure that all of our values and goals were on the same page. So the first step that we took was getting together to create a team charter. Some of our common goals were sort of working with some new technologies, for example, React. We hadn't had much exposure to that. Some individuals were more interested in other technological aspects, such as building a standalone API and hosting things on Heroku. But all in all, we were kind of mainly concerned with cementing our learning over the past 12 weeks, making sure that we were taking kind of the approaches and good methodology, such as test-driven development and strong modeling, into a process that, as well as sharing our learning together, we would create a good working atmosphere.
Cool, so I'm going to quickly show you our product. So this is the user page, so you can log in with a username and password. and then go ahead and click login. Once you do that, you'll come to your home page. So on the home page, you will have your stamps wallet and the option to log out. So if you then go to stamps, you'll see the stamps that you've previously received. Once you click a stamp, you'll be able to enter the code you've received from the business to claim your stamp. And then once you've got 10 stamps, you get your reward, which you can then add to your wallet. The codes are business specific, so different businesses can give different codes. So as you can see there, that required a different code. And then if you go to your wallet, you can then see your rewards that you've received. So there's the 10% off milk, and you can use that, or you can go ahead and log out. If you're not already a user, you can sign up with a username and password, and then start collecting stamps.
Thanks, Will. Our tech stack, this is our tech stack. So our application is comprised of two separate applications, actually, a front end and a back end. The front end is built out of React.js, which is a JavaScript framework, and our testing and linting was done with Jest and ESLint, respectively. We used two very useful packages with the React front end, React Router, which allowed us to simulate a multi-page app, and Axios, which helped us write clean code for making get and post requests to our API. Our API was built out of Ruby on Rails with a Postgres database, and we tested that with RSpec and Rubocop. Our useful gems we had in order to make the API secure was to use JWT, which generated authentication tokens, which means you can't access the API without the proper authorization, and bcrypt to store passwords hashed correctly. Our backend API was also hosted on Heroku, so it's live and can be accessed by appropriate front ends. Just to give you a quick demo of how data flows through the app, if you log in on the front end, your credentials will be sent to the back end and verified, and then an authentication token will be created, and where it will be stored by the browser and local storage. Then let's say you want to add a stamp on your front-end application, as was demonstrated. The stamp is then verified with the code from the business. This data is then sent to the backend along with the token. The token is then validated by the backend, and the stamp is then stored securely on the backend database. The server will then send back the number of stamps you now have, and your card will be updated with the total number of stamps as you saw demoed. Thank you.
So we used an agile style of working in our approach, which means that our day-to-day usually involved daily stand-ups, which ensured that we were communicating regularly. And we also had evening retros as well, which were a great tool in reflecting on how our day had progressed and if there were any lessons learned throughout the day. So in the interest of giving everyone a fair role within our team, we rotated our leadership and scry roles. This just helps spread responsibility throughout the team. We opted for 2-day sprints, which we felt were most effective use of our time, rather than moving everyone around and disrupting workflow. What this meant is that we remained in our pairs for a lot longer. Some of the tools we used were Trello for planning, Miro for ideation, and Framer to help mock up our project. We also used the Wheel of Names to help decide roles. Our development journey faced a few challenges, namely learning a new framework and testing library. The majority of us hadn't really touched React before, and it was quite a challenge wrapping our heads around it. The project scale was also a lot larger than we anticipated. We spent a few days trying to unblock ourselves as well. This was mostly down to production bugs caused by authentication tokens, which was paralyzed for a hot minute. We overcame these challenges through utilizing our best resource, Google and the internet. We did a thorough research and tutorials to help us tackle those new frameworks, new technologies. We also got together whenever a specific pair was blocked with a problem, we would get together, try and figure it out as a team, and get through the problem. We also engaged in rigorous debugging methodology to help squish any persistent bugs. As a result, our final project ended up being a fun little app, which was fully functioning, which had a fully functioning front end and back end with fully implemented JSON authentication tokens. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, team lads. I know I'm often too lazy to properly recycle items that I can't just put in the normal recycling bin. So something like this would definitely be an extra incentive to do it. And it's really cool to see that you managed to build something from scratch in just a few days using a completely new framework. On to the next team. So when you work out, do you find yourself faffing around between exercises and sets, trying to remember what you meant to do next, or just getting distracted by stuff on your phone? Team FitLife Ltd built something to make your workouts your own and help you use your workout time as productively as possible. So Team FitLife, when you're ready, go for it.
Thanks, Emma. Our team is Team FitLife, and then within our team we have Emma, Ralph, Nata, and me, Taran. And together we created FitList. So the idea for FitList kind of came about where we all kind of found it frustrating to sometimes use fitness apps. It was difficult to store your own workouts and manage it in one place. And then that's where FitList comes in, as it's a FitList app which allows you to create and track your own customizable workouts. For our app, we use the MERN tech stack. So MERN consists of MongoDB, Express, React Native, and Node. So generally the way the app works is a user will interact with the front end, which is built in React and React Native. And then that kind of talks to the backend server, which is built in Node and is using Express and Mongoose. And then our data is stored in the database, which is MongoDB. So I'm going to pass it over to Nata, who's going to talk about our progress and some of the challenges that we faced.
Thank you, Taran. So the first challenge that we faced was that half of our team didn't know anything about MERN stack. So the way we overcame it is we set up the projects all together. We reviewed and explained the code to each other. And we did a lot of knowledge sharing with different resources, and also allocated a lot of time to individual learning as well as pair programming. The second hurdle was to filter all the ideas that we had and to set clear project goals. And using different tools, we created small and reachable minimum viable product. And also we followed the agile methodology with sprints and roles. The third challenge was using more advanced React Native components, and especially animation components. So we went through a lot of animation tutorials and explored the timing, sequencing, and also tying it together with the rest of the app. But Emma is going to talk in more detail about this and show you the demo.
Yeah, thanks, Nata. So this is a quick demo of what we made. As you can see, you can create a new user with which you can sign up to the app. Once signed up, you can see a list of workouts, and every list of workouts, it's got a title and a list of exercises, which you can create and edit and play with. Every exercise has got a title, a duration in minutes and seconds, a description, and you can add an image. So right now in here, we're gonna quickly create a new workout with a couple of exercises in it, play around with the timer. As you can see, there's loads of times you can pick. And I think it was definitely one of the first challenges was to get the images in, because most of us hadn't worked with images before. Others had worked with it, but only on web applications and not on phone applications. So to get it to work from your phone was a big challenge, but definitely cool to find out. Something else we played with was the buttons are SVGs, which means that they are encoded images, which we made on Illustrator and then got into a coding machine. And that means that you can completely play with it in the code itself. So now that we made a workout, you can look at it again. At the top, you can see the total duration. So we're going to edit it a bit so that it's in total 1 minute. And then we can actually see the exercise played. And that was definitely the biggest challenge to get to work, so that it scrolls automatically. You've got the bar moving down, changing color and opacity at the same time. It's got the number going down, and then when the duration is over, it scrolls automatically to the next one, and it automatically plays the next duration, next exercise. This was really hard to figure out, but it was really cool once it started working. And then when you get to the last one, it takes you to a little dancing Elmo to celebrate that you're done. You can also delete workouts, log out, and then log back in with an existing user. That's it. I'll give it over to Rob.
Thanks, Emma. So we had a number of successes and achievements. As Nata mentioned, half the team had prior experience in the frameworks we chose to work in, which we leveraged to develop the app within the project timeframe while still prioritizing a shared knowledge base. We found that we had to adapt our modeling process from what we were used to due to the new type of database we were working in. So we started with a simple definition of what makes a workout, and that's on the left side of the screen there. And then we proceeded to try and bring those elements into more of a free-form model of how the user might interact with them, and then get something more concrete out of that by bringing them into wireframes with another tool. In the last picture, you see just a picture of Trello, which is the tool we use to manage our ticket system. We just found that the stand-ups and retros were really conducive alongside the modeling to kind of give us the value of modeling, but also help us to change the implementation as our understanding evolved. The scope of our features initially were a lot wider, and we narrowed those down, focusing instead on ways to improve functionality rather than just deliver more. Ultimately, we set out to learn more about unfamiliar JavaScript technologies and feel we've achieved that well. That's it from us. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Team FitLife. It's a really cool app you got there. It's super polished and impressive, given that the course doesn't cover mobile development, and React Native has a steep learning curve, and you really produced something that looks really slick. So putting the effort into those animations was really worth it, I think. So thank you, Team FitLife. On to the next team. So another cool thing I haven't mentioned about the March cohort is that while they were with us, we weren't only teaching people how to code, but also parrots. So one of the members of the next team owns pet parrots, and they've been regular guests in our Zoom workshops. But being approved to provide a home for an exotic bird like a parrot is actually quite tricky. So the next team, Team Party Parrots, spent the last few weeks building something to make that process easier. So Team Party Parrots, over to you.
Okay, so we are Shah, Flora, and me, Lou, and we are Party Parrots. We created an app to facilitate the application for and rehoming of rescue parrots. So I work as a volunteer for the charity Birdline, so I know a bit about the process of rehoming rescue parrots. It involves a lot of manually emailing forms, arranging and completing phone calls, and it's really time consuming. We wanted to streamline the process and automate it where we could to make it easier for applicants and more time efficient for charity workers. So our app enables charities to post parrots, but also for users to apply for parrots and to know the status of their application. Now I'm going to pass over to Flora to demo our app.
Thanks, Lou. Yeah, welcome to Parrotparty. This is the homepage where you can log in or sign up. So if we create an account, we can see we've got a standard form, but the option to sign up as a charity user or as an individual who wants to adopt a parrot. So we're going to sign in as Shah, who works for a charity, and we can see that she's put up all these parrots for adoption and hoping they get a home. If we look at Demi, we get all her information, and we see that someone, I'm a pirate, has applied to adopt Demi. Shah can read the message and approve it, and we get a little alert saying approved. So let's go and look at the application from the other side. So if we log in as I'm a pirate, we see that Demi's got a little icon over her home. So that's the first sign that she's been approved. And then we get some confetti on a successful application status. So now let's go back and try and adopt another parrot. But this time we want to get one that's near our friend in Wales. So we go through the map view and we can see there's a couple and we want the one in Cardiff. So we'll click and we'll say, Kobe looks good. We can read all the information and write our message as our application. And you would have to fill in this field to be able to click apply. So once we've written our message, we can click apply and we get an application status of waiting for a response because no charity has seen it yet. And these are all the parrots from all the charities that are available for adoption. If we log back in as Shah as our charity user, we can show how to add a parrot if one comes into the charity that needs a home. So we're going to click add. First, we can upload a photo. You pick the birds that need a home because you want to show everyone how cute they are. And then we'll fill in the info, so cookie and cream, the charity, the species, the age, and the location. So these birds are in Hull. So we'd scroll down to the map, put in Hull and just make sure that the parrot icon has moved up to Hull so that we can save our parrot. If we click add parrot, we go back to the parrot page and we can see that cookie and cream have been added. We click on them, we have all that information there. And that's it. Thank you.
Sorry. So thank you, Flora. Now I'm going to talk about our motivation. We all wanted more experience with JavaScript and to try out new frameworks. So we used a stack of Node.js and Express for the backend and React Native for the front end, with Mongo, as it's a database we hadn't used before, and Jest and Enzyme for testing. And because our whole mission is to make life easier, we wanted to have an attractive, fun, and user-friendly interface. Everything was new to us, so we did some tutorials independently to begin with so that we knew what we were letting ourselves in for. The most important thing we learned is that clear, open communication from the beginning is important so that we all know where we're at, what our challenges are, and what we want to achieve. One of the biggest challenges was choosing what project to do. We had so many ideas. We tried to make the process as democratic as possible through voting and giving each person a veto if they didn't want to do something. Once we'd decided on a project, we then had to decide which features out of our huge list would be a priority. We ran into a number of problems when using external packages, such as the library for interacting with AWS to upload images. It would crash the app every time we uploaded a photo. We ensured that we came together as a team as much as possible to share ideas and to help to debug. We found it really difficult to test in React Native. And though we did test, our development was not test-driven. So I'm going to pass over to Shah to talk about our successes.
Thank you, Luke. First of all, I think we implemented all the top features we wanted, and we have an attractive user interface. We're very happy about that. Also, our process went quite smooth. We followed agile practice, did small iterations, and kept our Trello board up to date for project management. We have been continuously learning during the project, used all the tech stacks we wanted, and achieved all the learning goals. Finally, and most importantly, we had so much fun together developing the app. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Party Parrots. It's really cool that you know, by learning coding, you've been able to actually tackle a problem that is so close to your heart and something that could actually help for a charity that you actually work for. So it's really cool to see that. And I really like all the attention to detail you put into the UI of the app to make it parrot-like, parrot-colored. That's really cool. So for our next and final team, something kind of joyful and whimsical to finish off our demo day. Maybe something to give you a new appreciation and connection to life in your neighborhood, and more specifically to neighbors of the feline variety. So our last team's called The Amazing Catalyst, and they'll be presenting an app to gamify all those walks we've been doing around our neighborhoods lately. So whenever you're ready, Team Cat.
Good afternoon. We'd like to proudly present to you our app, notmycat, developed by Team Catalyst. Over to you, Lee.
Thanks, Max. So what is notmycat? Well, do you ever find really great cats on your walks and you think, if only I remembered where I saw that cat, or maybe I want to know where I can find other really good cats in my area? Well, notmycat is a web app that allows you to save all the best cats you see on your walks. You can give the cat a name of your choice and set some cat attributes to determine its catitude, floofiness, and how chonky it is. And not only does this allow you to save all the cats you see, but it also sets up a cat card ready to play a game of Top Cat. All the saved cats on the web app are saved to a map with those little cat pins. And now you can go out and explore and find those cats. And if you find a cat, you can click a spotted button on its cat card. And now for our demo with Stu.
Cheers, Lee. So here we can see the landing page with a selection of cats, and we're going to sign up a new user. And we can see that the validation that requires all fields completed and that an email is entered that hasn't been used to create an account before. The login screen also checks that the details are correct, and it uses a JSON web token to authenticate the user when the details are correct. As a new user, we can add a cat that we might have spotted on our travels. The cat card is populated with the details as they are entered from the form, and they are validated to ensure they're correct. There is a certain number of points that a cat can have in its cat attributes, and they have to total 20. An image can be uploaded, and it's stored in the database as a base 64 string. And as we can see, we need to top these points up to 20. If we go to the My Cat screen, we can see our cat is created. And in the My Cat screen, we can see the cat card that we've made. We could delete the cat, but we won't at this point. We're going to play Top Cat. And as we can see, our cat's here with the cat, and with the cat attributes, we can choose a cat attribute to compare with another random cat. And the wins are incremented on the card on the top left. We could choose to play again, choose a different cat attribute. And as we can see, we're on a bit of a roll here. The game compares the cat attributes with simple logic to evaluate whether which cat has the highest cat attribute of the given choice. After that, we can go to the cat map screen, and we can see our cat's been created on the map at our current location, or the location of the client, which is saved on the cat card creation. And if we zoom out, we can see, using the Google Map API, we can look around the map and see other cats. And if we're on a walk, say, out in the park, Hyde Park, we spot a cat, and that cat has been created on notmycat, we can spot that cat and increment its spotted counter. All right, I just want to talk about our tech stack. So we used MERN tech stack with MongoDB as the database and Express.js for routing on the back end of the framework. And we used in the front end, we used React and Node. We chose MERN to choose something new that we hadn't worked with before, a non-SQL database, and to create something with a full JavaScript stack instead of like using Ruby on Rails, which we'd used previously. For backend testing, we used Jest and Supertest, and we achieved full coverage, although front-end testing was put on a back burner, as we'll talk about later. The experience we wanted to gain from this was to avoid the use of external packages, to develop our understanding, and create a React front end using only functional components, and using a JSON web token for authentication instead of sessions, which we had used a lot previously. And now over to Max.
So how did we go from scratch to our wonderful web app? Well, on day one, we discussed as a group what we wanted to get from a team, from the project, learning goals and what we wanted to create. We brainstormed our ideas, and we eventually agreed on the idea, and we were very excited about the possibilities that this idea would bring in terms of features and learning opportunities. We also agreed on the language we'd use, database and frameworks. The project had a lot of scope and different possible features, so it's really important to break it down into chunks so we could develop it in a manageable way. We used Miro to hold our web page designs and for project planning as a pinboard. And we visualized the user journey using the app, how they'd interact with the app and the journey they would take. We decided on a minimal viable product to be built by the first Wednesday, and we decided this would be basic logging in and displaying cats. We then decided, once we'd completed that, the extra features we'd like to implement. We managed to get a lot done, including creating cats, displaying the cats by location, and the Top Cat game. We used Trello to organise our workflow, daily schedule, and sharing resources. And we worked in pairs over 2-day cycles to ensure that we had end-to-end completion and learning on all our features. If we move to the next page, we can see our team charter. As you can see, our learning was kind of, as a learning experience, that was the most important thing we felt. And this kind of, it shows how we would set up the days in the morning with a stand-up and retros in the evening. Over to David.
Thanks, Max. So the biggest challenges we faced as a team were during the first week, learning and working with a new tech stack that most of us hadn't worked with before, learning React, which was a steep and intense learning curve because of the time pressure, and working with JavaScript, as each of us had varying abilities and confidence in coding with JavaScript, and using MongoDB as a database, which was a different way of storing data in a database that we hadn't worked with previously. By far the biggest blocker we faced was working with the new testing frameworks, Jest and Enzyme. This led to a challenge to maintain momentum through the first week. By Friday, we didn't have much visually to showcase, lots of unconnected pieces of code that felt very far from a finished product. From this, we decided to focus mainly on the back-end testing and to prioritize delivering complete front-end features. This brings us on to what went well. So what got us through and kept us moving forward right from day one as a team, we brainstormed in developing our team charter and committed to learning and working with the new tech stack and JavaScript. We knew it would be challenging, and we were all on the same page with our personal learning goals for the project. This got us through the challenges and the decision making because we were very clear from the start about what we wanted to deliver with the end product that you see today. As a team, we were also focused on knowledge sharing daily and sharing and solving coding problems together. Also, the artistic skills Lou brought helped us build a notmycat brand and look. And finally, we had a lot of fun whilst working together, including some late night coding sessions and styling sessions to deliver the final product you see. And that was notmycat from Catalyst.
Thank you, Team Team Catalyst. So really cool design. I'm really impressed by that, and also by the amount of features you managed to put into the final app. When I heard the original idea, I hadn't even, maybe you'd already thought of it, but I'd never heard about the Trump card aspect of it. So that was a surprise. It was a really cool addition. So I can already think of some cats I'd add if I had access. So that's it. Those were all our teams for today's demo day. And so thank you to all the teams for your hard work and great presentations. It's inspiring every time to see what can be achieved in so little time. You've produced amazing results and using frameworks and tech stacks that you didn't have any prior experience in. So you can all be very proud of yourselves. And I wish you all the best for the rest of your journey in the tech and software engineering world. And it's great to be able to welcome you to our world. Thank you also to everyone who's joined us tonight for this demo day to celebrate the March cohort's achievements. So if you'd like to stay with us, I'll hand over to Haley now to start the Q&A session, and I'll also be around to answer any questions. Thank you.
Cool, thank you so much, Simo, and just congratulations to the cohort as well. It's kind of weird not being able to like properly applaud you, but yeah, no, it's amazing to see your projects. If you are part of the cohort, feel free to log off now, have some virtual Zoom drinks, enjoy yourselves. You really deserve it after the full 16 weeks of the bootcamp. So yeah, thank you for sharing your projects with us. Cool, so if you're here as somebody who's maybe looking to join Makers, for the next kind of 30 minutes, 45 minutes maybe, we're going to answer a couple of your questions just about what it's like on the course, how we teach, admissions, all those kinds of things. So if you'd like to submit a question to us, you can just do that by going to the little Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen and typing in some questions, and myself and the team will be able to answer those for you. while you're kind of getting started, maybe thinking about what you want to ask, it'd be great if we could kind of maybe get to know our team a little bit. So Rachel, I'll start with you. Could you just give us a bit of an overview of like what you do here at Makers and how you help students?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm Rachel. I work at Makers as a course manager. So I help people through their application journey. So if you're interested in Makers, you might speak to me on the phone even before you apply, or once you apply. I'm here to sort of help support you and get you ready for an interview with us. So yeah, hopefully I should be able to answer questions about that today if anybody's interested.
Awesome, thanks Rachel. And Timo, obviously we know like you're a technical coach. It'd be great to know like how long have you been at Makers, what were you doing before Makers, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So I've been at Makers since the beginning of this year. Before that, I was a software engineer at both in a startup and before that in a large tech company. And I've worked across a variety of different sorts of technologies and teams in sort of mostly back-end engineering roles, but also doing some data engineering, some machine learning stuff, data science, a bunch of different things. So yeah, feel free to ask if you're interested. But yeah, all of our coaches kind of come from a background of being software engineers themselves first. Cool,
thank you both. So Rachel, I'm just going to kind of get started with a couple of the questions that we tend to get a lot from potential students. So if we start with prep work, if you're someone who's like very new to code, what would you advise as like a good place to get started?
Yeah, so Code Academy is like a website that has lots of free courses on there. So I would suggest having a look at Code Academy. If you're interested specifically in Makers, as part of the application process, we ask people to have a look at the Learn Ruby course. So you could have a look at starting to tackle a couple of those lessons if you're interested. But yeah, lots of free resources online that you could start with if you're wanting to just generally look at coding.
Oh, amazing, thank you. Laptop is trying to update, so let's stop that from happening. Cool, okay. So we've got one in the chat, which is for you, Timo. They're asking, how is the course structured? What are the learning goals? And does the final project make up the whole of the course, or is it just focused on towards the back end of the course?
Yeah, okay. So how's the course structured? It starts with the first 4 weeks are called sort of the pre-course. So those you do in your own time. You still have contact with coaches, but there's no sort of scheduled workshops. So you're working through some big sort of the basics of Ruby and starting to learn about test-driven development, stuff like that. Then once you've done those first 4 weeks, you go into the main bit of the course, which are the next 12 weeks. And of those 12 weeks, the final project is really only the last 2 weeks. So everything that you saw was done in sort of a bit less even than 2 weeks. And the weeks before that are made up of, I guess, so it starts off with more focus on test-driven development and object-oriented design. So we start off with teaching Ruby, and through Ruby teaching object-oriented design and test-driven development. But then that's sort of the first 2 weeks, but fairly quickly you're going to start being exposed to everything you need really to become a full-stack web developer. So you'll focus on how to build websites, both the back-end part of the website, but also the front-end. So the user interface, databases, how you store data and make it so that websites remember what you put into them. Then you'll learn JavaScript, and with JavaScript you'll get even more exposure to how the web works, because JavaScript is really sort of the language of the web. No website works without JavaScript, interleaved with that are a couple of group projects. So in total, you'll do 3 group projects. One of those is a final project, but before that, there are 2 other group projects which help you consolidate and practice. So they help you consolidate what you learned in the other weeks, but also practice what it's like to work on a real software engineering team. And really, that's the goal, the learning goals for makers, is to make you ready to work as a software engineer on a real team, producing real software that gets used. So it includes a large part of our curriculum is also giving you the sort of process skills, the soft skills that you need to be a software engineer. So like I highlighted at the beginning, teamwork and collaboration, good communication skills are all integral to that. So yeah, that's sort of a rough overview, maybe.
Cool, thank you, Simo. I think that was a pretty comprehensive answer. Lovely. So we've had a couple more come in on the Q&A, so thank you for submitting them. The next question is asking, do we recommend students to not have a part-time job? Rachel, I'm going to pass that on to you.
Yeah, yeah, during the course, just because the 12-week part of the course is full-time, like Monday to Friday, like 9 till 5:30 or 6, then yeah, you can't really have a part-time job, or we would, yeah, definitely say that you shouldn't. In the pre-course, which Simone mentioned, the first 4 weeks of the course are part-time, so you could perhaps have a part-time job in those first 4 weeks, because the work is sort of independent study. As long as you had 20 to 25 hours to put into the pre-course materials, you'd be fine to have a part-time job in that bit, but yeah, not in the full-time part.
Cool, lovely, thanks so much. So the next question is around support kind of after the bootcamp. So they're asking, what's the support like post bootcamp, and is there any support in finding a job afterwards? So this is a great question, and I think when you're looking at bootcamps, that often, you know, it's the after support that can really differentiate it. And at Makers, I know that a big focus on what we do is the job hunting side of things. And so there's kind of 2 main teams who look after job hunting support. So there's our partnerships team, first of all, and their job is to kind of go out into the industry, meet with companies, let them know, you know, about Maker students, what they learn, and, you know, invite them to list their jobs and become one of our like official hiring partners. And so, yeah, that team kind of like makes those connections for you. It's almost like they do the kind of like first stage of job hunting, if you like. Then the other team that we have here is the careers coaches, and they kind of do all of like the skills side of things. So obviously most people are coming from different industries that aren't tech, and you know, a technical interview and the whole process can look quite a lot different to maybe what you've come from before. So they'll kind of break down that process for you, help you with CV workshops, all sorts of job hunting skills that really kind of like fine tune job hunting as a skill, because it's kind of a full-time task after the course finishes. So they're the main 2 teams. And Simo, am I right in that the technical coaches can help in the interview process now as well? Like preparing for an interview, sorry.
Yeah, so we're still around even after the interview, so you can still message us and might even, you know, be on calls with us. And we will also sort of rotate on and off the sort of job hunter support. So when you have an interview scheduled, you can fill out a form so that we're aware and we can check in with you before the interview and talk through what the interview might be like, what kind of support you might need and stuff like that. You'll also still have access to all of the course content and can ask those questions about technical things still. So many of those, all the course materials are still available to you.
Cool, thanks so much. So the next question is also about job hunting. They're asking, does the job service work if you're not living around the London area and a company is expanding their search? Now remote working is increasing. Generally speaking, I mean, most of our contacts within our hiring partner kind of pool are London based. but that said, we are starting to see kind of a little bit of an uptake from a little bit wider than that. I know that we've got a couple of hiring partners in Cambridge, some in Bristol, I think, but like generally, because we're established in London, that's where we've historically been focused. That said, you're perfectly allowed and encouraged to look for jobs outside of our hiring partners as well. So I know quite a few people have been hired in Bristol recently because they've done the course remotely, and that's, you know, where they want to stay. So all of the job support and stuff is kind of applicable wherever you live. It's just that our immediate group of companies are less likely to include as many companies outside of London. Cool. So the next question is asking, would we recommend getting into Ruby on Rails prior to attending the academy? Simo, would you be able to help with that, please?
No, I mean, if you're interested, sure, but I would start with just getting into Ruby by itself. Ruby on Rails is something that we do. You'll learn on the bootcamp. There's one group project, a 2-week group project, which is all about Ruby on Rails, and you'll be able to pick that up with a knowledge of Ruby. That should be easy enough to pick up, and you don't need to prepare that beforehand.
Cool, thank you, Simo. So Rachel, I'm going to ask you this one. So the next person's asking about apprenticeships. They've noticed there's no apprenticeships listed on our website at the moment, and is it likely to open up again soon?
I don't know an exact date, but I know that they opened up earlier in the year. So we took an amount of applications, and they're sort of sitting in a pool of applicants, so that when we do get apprenticeship opportunities, we're sort of using this pool that we've currently got. I think over the next 3 or 4 months, it will open back up for more people to join this sort of like talent pool. But yeah, I can't say sort of an exact date, unfortunately. On the website though, you must put your email address in on the sort of like register your interest section, because that's how we'll sort of notify anybody if anything does open back up.
Cool, thank you so much. Cool, so the next question is asking, will the online course be continuing when things are back to normal? Normal life, what a dream that would be. Yeah, so I think it's a strange one, because with COVID and, you know, everything that's come out of it, I think, you know, we've realized that some of our students or people who are thinking about joining us, the remote option is really beneficial, whether it's because of their location or you know, family commitments or whatever else. So I think we're going to be announcing more kind of like official dates and which one's which relatively soon. But I think for the foreseeable future, we will be offering some online options. So if you are one of those people where it's you know, better that way, yes, you will still be able to apply. Rachel, do we have any dates for those yet, or is it in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, no, just like you said, in the next couple of weeks, we'll definitely announce what things might look like over the next few months. So yeah, just keep an eye on the website and the newsletter, I would say.
Thank you. And if you're not signed up to the newsletter, you can do that on our homepage. Cool. That's all of the questions in the chat. The last one I wanted to ask you, just because you touched on it earlier, Simo, and it's something that we get asked a lot, is just obviously at Makers we start training people in Ruby, and then, you know, the course kind of expands out to different languages and technologies and things. Could you kind of share to people who might be new to coding, like, why do we start off with Ruby and kind of how that affects you know, your kind of like learning going forward?
Yeah, sure. So Ruby is nice because it looks a lot like, well, some people say it looks a lot like English. I'm not sure, but it's a very simple. It has simple syntax, and by simple, it doesn't mean that it's sort of a less powerful language or a toy language, but just that the designers of the language, their main focus was to make it easily readable. And so it's a good language to start with teaching because it reduces the amount of details that you need to understand that aren't really to do with coding, but more to do with sort of distracting design choices of the people that design the language. So it's less intimidating, and you'll be able to grasp sort of what we really want to teach is how programming works. We don't really care about Ruby specifically, but it's more that with Ruby, because it has none of this other stuff to distract you, you can focus on learning programming and the mechanics of programming. And another one is that Ruby has a nice community that's very welcoming for beginners. So in the programming world, that's not always the case. And so you might not find a lot of documentation geared towards beginners for certain languages, but Ruby has will have a lot of material out there that will help you learn even without having a sort of programming background. Also, Ruby has nice error messages, which you, as a developer, you tend to see a lot of error messages, whether you're a beginner or not. But you know, it really matters how descriptive they are, and the more descriptive and useful, helpful they are, the more they can guide you as you learn programming. And then Ruby also looks quite similar in syntax to another very popular programming language, Python. So they're not actually that similar in terms of how they work, but they look similar, which again will make it easier for you to learn Python, which is used a lot in the industry, if you wanted to. So because there'll be just fewer hoops to jump to when you go to Python. Yeah, so that's why we start with Ruby. But we also teach JavaScript, and JavaScript is just, you can't get around JavaScript if you want to build websites. And as you could see, the teams from before even built mobile apps using JavaScript, because nowadays you can build mobile apps using JavaScript. So that's why we wouldn't be a real coding bootcamp if we didn't teach JavaScript. And it's also very in demand in the workplace. The other thing with JavaScript, if you're not so interested in the web, being a web developer, it's still a good language to learn just because the syntax looks a bit similar to some more traditional programming languages, maybe some traditional programming languages that are used on the back end more, so on the servers. And so after learning Ruby, which has a bit simpler syntax, you learn JavaScript, you already know sort of the mechanics of how programming works. Now you can, all these extra difficult syntax will be easier for you to pick up. And once you know you've been exposed to a language with more difficult syntax, you'll be ready as well to explore other languages that have similar syntax to JavaScript, such as Java or C++ or Scala, or Kotlin and stuff like that, which you might be interested in. So even if you're not interested in the web, JavaScript is a good one. So that's sort of our reasoning for why we teach Ruby and JavaScript.
Awesome, thanks so much. And the last question that we're going to finish off with today is about, do we track the percentage of people who get jobs at the end of the course and the average salary? So we have numbers for kind of before COVID time. So within 6 months of graduating, the hiring rate was 89%. That's not to say that the others didn't get a job after that, but that's kind of the comparative time period that most boot camps use. And the average salary was 32K. It's worth noting that that salary is quite London centric. So again, that might change if you're in other areas. During COVID, I don't have the hiring rate number, but it's obviously definitely fallen. I think we're planning on doing some work around it to see, like, what it is, but I think it's been quite changeable over the months. But yeah, if you do actually want to follow up on that, I'll put my email in the chat in a second, so I can find out for you. And the salary salary range has stayed the same. The only thing to note is some people who are remote have got jobs in different locations, which again is might be lower salaries. So hopefully that's helpful. Awesome. So last couple of things to sort of like round up from us. Obviously, you know, we love answering your questions, but it's also great to hear it from our alumni perspective, because they've literally been there and done that. So we're hosting a Q&A event on Monday, where you'll meet 3 of our students who have all studied during the last year, so remotely, kind of during COVID, and they've all found jobs as software developers. So the link for that is in the chat now. I'd definitely recommend attending, because yeah, it's just a whole different perspective if you actually lived you know, through the course. So yeah, hopefully come along. Also, if you wanted to find out a little bit more kind of information about you know, which students are getting hired, that kind of thing, we list the people and the companies that they're getting hired at in our newsletter as well. So it's kind of it's really handy to see the range of companies people go to work at, you know, from big corporates to like little startups and that kind of thing. So yeah, check that out if you're not already registered. Cool. I think that's it from us. So yeah, thank you for joining us today and have a lovely weekend. All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.